right, so we're taking a look at this problem. This one gives us a graph as opposed to a table, which we saw today. But we still want to be able to interpret the meaning that we get from the graph and use it to explain what's happening in this situation. So the question says, a zoo sponsored a one-day contest to name a new baby elephant. I'm sure something you guys are all very interested in. Zoo visitors deposited entries throughout the day, and at 8 p.m. volunteers began to process the entries. They processed the entries at a rate modeled by the function p, shown in the graph below, measured in hundreds of entries per hour for all times starting at 8 up until 12. It's shown right there. A couple things that I just want to make sure that are noted, or that I mark down and annotate, is that the y-axis is measuring hundreds of entries per hour, right? So if I'm at 6, for example, that would be 600 entries per hour at that time. And that's very key. It's not saying that there are 600 entries at that point that have been processed. They're saying that's the rate at which they're processing at that instant. Okay? So that's key to note. And the question asks us to use the graph to explain what happens to the rate at which the volunteers are processing entries as the night goes on. And I want to think about this real quick, and I want to put this in my own words. So I want you to just pause for a second and put this question in your own words. What are you trying to figure out? All right, hopefully you paused and you came back, and what you thought about was, as the night goes on, what's the rate at which these people are working? How hard are they working? Are they working quickly? Are they working slowly? Are they processing a lot of entries? At certain points, where are they processing the most entries in a given time? And when are they speeding up? When are they slowing down? And we can ascertain all this information by looking at our graph. So we want to first kind of take a look and make sure we know which parts of our graph we're working with. So we want to go from 8 to 12. They, I guess, cut off at midnight. So that makes sense. And we just kind of want to think about, okay, starting at 8, what's happening? Well, obviously at 8 p.m., they aren't processing any entries, right? Right at 8 p.m., they start working. And what seems to be happening? Well, if we look here, as time starts moving on, it appears as though the rate's increasing. So for example, let's go to 9 real quick. At hour 9, it appears as though they're processing 500 entries per hour. Not bad. Shortly after 9 o'clock, maybe we say this is 9:15, their rates start to slow, right? They're decelerating, okay? And this happens all the way up until what appears to be 11 p.m. Or maybe a little before. Let's call it 10:50. So at 10:50, they are at a little less than 300 entries per hour. And then they start to notice, oh my gosh, it's getting late. We only want to be here till 12. We don't want to be here any later. We're going to need to speed up in order to get all these entries processed to figure out this baby elephant's name. So starting at 10:50, they put the pedal to the metal, and for the next hour and 10 minutes, they work even faster, continually faster, until midnight, where they stop at, let's see, right around 750 entries per hour. Not bad. Okay? So we want to clearly identify this. I'm going to use the red portion to identify places where the rate is increasing. So it's increasing up until this point, and we'll say this point is 9:15. And then I'm going to use blue to denote where it's decreasing. It's decreasing from 9:15 till about 10:50. And then their rate is continually increasing up until midnight, at which we decided was right there, which happened to be, I guess it's a little higher. No, right here. Sorry. About 750. Now, remember, it's in hundreds. So that's why it's 750. 750 entries per hour. Okay, at midnight. And so I would want to write this up. I'd want to carefully detail, okay, the rate is increasing, and I want to make sure that I say the rate, not the number of entries processed, but the rate at which they're processing entries is increasing up until 9:15. Then their rate slows and decelerates until 10:50, and then starting at 10:50, their rate increases up until they are finished working at midnight. Hope that was helpful. See you guys tomorrow.